I Love CVille Network on a crisp fall afternoon in downtown Charlottesville. We are less than 2 miles from the University of Virginia, from Scott Stadium and the John Paul Jones Arena. We are 100 yards removed from the Charlottesville Police Department, a block off the downtown mall, and smack dab in the middle of the epicenter of a 300,000 person market we call Central Virginia. This market is dynamic. It's dynamic in that we have billionaires living here. We have one of the most prestigious universities in the world that calls its home here in Charlottesville and Albemarle County. We have industries like biotechnology and data science and finance that are booming and just drawing more people to Central Virginia to live. We have some of the best music in the country right here in Central Virginia, some of the best restaurants in the country here in Central Virginia, some of the best outdoor activities. And these are some of the reasons why Charlottesville, Albemarle County, and Central Virginia are such a popular place to live. Because of these dynamics, it is Central Virginia, Charlottesville, and Albemarle County continuing to find friction points that leave folks asking why. Why is this happening to us? Why is this happening now? Folks ask the question, how can we adapt and how can we continue to pivot and stay ahead of what seems to be ever mounting or difficult to manage cost of living. And interestingly, another dynamic here in Central Virginia is it's becoming very quickly a media desert. As it becomes more expensive to live in Charlottesville, in Albemarle County, and in Central Virginia, what you are finding is the media and their salaries, which are below cost of living, are either quitting, the positions are being eviscerated, or they're just vanishing. You saw that with the editor at Madison County, the Madison County Eagle. That position was recently dissolved. Lee Enterprises owns the Madison County Eagle, and now the Daily Progress in Charlottesville will be responsible for editing and planning the content coverage in Madison County, Virginia, which is easily a half an hour away for Charlottesville and Albemarle, and has its own nuances and its own idiosyncrasies. You look at the reporters at the TV stations at NBC 29 and CBS 19, and these reporters are fresh from college, often making $10, $12, $13, $14, $15 an hour. If they stay longer than 18 months in this market, then they probably are not set for a reporting career on television. That's why they know it's an 18-month, maybe a 24-month time period before they have to find a new job in a larger market, because frankly, most of them can't make a living with what they're being paid to broadcast us the news. We are trying to fill that gap, and we are trying to fill that gap with the help of you. We don't ask you for money. We don't ask you for donations. What we want is to crowdsource news that is valuable and to relay it on air in a ubiquitous and approachable way. We have figured it out by harmonizing and synergizing 3 different softwares, proprietary softwares, and placing the content through these softwares, through this harmony, into a network we've called the I Love CVille Network that continues to grow in viewership and listenership. All we want to do is relay content that's local, personal, and human to Central Virginia, to you, the viewer and listener. And if it's us coming up with the ideas, or if it's you, the viewer and listener, we don't care. We just want to be the water cooler of it. Yesterday's program was dynamite. I got a lot of feedback on yesterday's program, Judah. Some very good feedback, some not so great feedback. I got a lot of feedback on Wednesday's show, Alex Witt and Nick Bell on the program. Some fantastic feedback, some uncertain feedback, and that's okay. That's what we want. What I'd like to do is first give some props to Mexicali Restaurant, Judah, West Main Street, Mexicali Restaurant, River Hawkins, Johnny Ornelas, 50 parking spots right on site in the Flats. It's an art museum, a street art museum. It's a cocktail bar. It's a music venue. It's a fusion Latin culinary destination. It's got a playground for kids. I suggest you go to Mexicali Restaurant tonight for dinner. And let's give some props to Charlottesville Business Brokers. It's one of our divisions. Charlottesville Business Brokers in the process right now of negotiating 3 different deals with institutional brands that are looking to exit their founders. I had this conversation earlier this week with the second generation owner of another institutional business, 60 plus years, sitting at my desk right over there, right off stage right. And I was having the conversation with the founder. He said, we're in this position where we have an ever-changing marketplace and an ever-changing consumer, and that consumer is buying things on the internet now more than ever. And we don't have the margin with the overhead associated with our brick and mortar retail business to cut price to the level of the internet. So now we're having to figure out how to survive. And how we're surviving is offering education as our value proposition. So when customers come in our doors, we offer them knowledge on the retail products they purchase, the type of knowledge that you cannot scour or find in the comment section of an Amazon store. And their hope is that is what's going to give them the runway to survive for another 60 years. I hear that from so many people with what I do. We are business confessional. You go to a Catholic church, you step into a confessional, and the priest hears the good, the bad, and the ugly. We hear the good, the bad, and the ugly of P&Ls, of balance sheets, of boardrooms, and of C-suites, and of founders every single day. And most of that good, bad, and ugly, most of the ugly is tied to how do you keep up with the ever-changing nature of technology and of innovation. And that's a struggle for anyone. A struggle that we're clearly seeing happening at the University of Virginia is a struggle for its brand identity. Is the University of Virginia going to be the school Thomas Jefferson founded? Is it going to be the University of Virginia of my father's 1968 to 1972? Is it going to be the University of Virginia of 2000 to 2004 when I was there? Is it going to be the University of Virginia of a decade ago? Is it going to be the UVA of pre-COVID times? Or is it going to be the UVA and continue in the direction it's heading today? And it's a conversation we had with Thomas Neale yesterday, Judah. Two-shot Judah Wickhauer. Tom Neale, president of the Jefferson Council. I thought it was an excellent interview. If you want to see the Tom Neale interview, you can find it on ilovecville.com, wherever you get your social media or podcasting content. What did you make first of Tom Neale on yesterday's program as you put the lower third on screen? You did not have an opportunity to speak. That's the only regret I have of the interview yesterday. And that is one of the challenges of me doing it via Skype. Mm-hmm. Is how do I weave Judah into the interview when he doesn't see Tom on screen? We could potentially have done it just strictly from an audio standpoint, but I want to start open-ended because I value your opinion. What'd you make of the Tom Neale Jefferson Council interview from yesterday?
I actually do kind of see him on screen since I'm watching everything as it happens, but yeah, I don't know if he would be able to hear me. I thought it was wonderful. I really appreciate not only his passion but his intellect. There's a lot of amazing information coming out of the Jefferson Council, and I really appreciate the work that they're doing. There's a fascinating article on the. I think he touched on this subject on how UVA is just seemingly uncaring about the increase in costs at the school and how that works in terms of scholarships, getting money for people, and then raising prices so that those that don't have scholarships are essentially subsidizing the higher and higher and higher costs of lower income students. A lot of really good stuff that he had to say.
You want to hear something interesting, viewers and listeners? The cost for an out-of-state student, on average, to attend the University of Virginia out of state, room, board, tuition, textbooks, $85,000. Tom, in yesterday's interview, pegged his household income between $175 and $200. It was very straightforward. He had 2 children graduate from the University of Virginia within the last 10 or 12 years. If you're making $175 to $200,000, from a family household income. And the cost for an out-of-state student, your son, your daughter, to attend UVA is $85K. You're probably thinking twice of sending your kid there. The students that are coming to the University of Virginia out of state at an $85,000 all-inclusive yearly rate are the 1%ers of the United States of America, the 1% families.
Yeah.
You'll have out-of-state students that are on scholarship, but for the most part, the out-of-state kids coming to UVA from 1% families. I highlight this again on the show because this gentrifies the community indirectly. Many of these students fall in love with Charlottesville and choose to return to Charlottesville, especially in this hybrid remote work environment that we're in today. I also was struck by a number of aspects of the interview that I want to weave to you, Judah, and the viewer and listener. One of the aspects from yesterday's interview that struck me was the pressures that Jim Ryan was facing on so many different fronts. We've highlighted those pressures on this show. Mm-hmm. To hear an alum of the school and the president of the Jefferson Council also highlight those pressures, I think the fragility of the president's position, the fragility of the president's tenure is something that is very real.
No doubt.
And as Youngkin's appointees continue to get their feet under them, 13 on the board of visitors, and as this health system scandal continues to gain momentum, and eventually as that audit report, the investigation into the mass murder of the football players, once it's released, if it's ever released, you have to wonder if that's the ammunition, the proverbial ammunition, that ends a presidency that started with rainbows and sunshine.
Yeah. Not to mention this new federal civil rights.
Put it in perspective. Tell the story.
I mean, it's.
Don't you find this story somewhat flabbergasting?
It's a bit absurd. It's also a bit refreshing.
Okay, go ahead. Tell the story. Who, what, when, where, why.
There is.
And you got the lower third on there?
Not yet. Let's see. There is a
student group at the University of Virginia that's active, that's extremely restrictive in membership. How restrictive in membership?
Well, there's. I don't even think that's.
Who, what, when, where, why?
All right. The WHO is the Equal Protection Project, a civil rights group who's filed the complaint against UVA and are demanding an investigation into a university group, as Jerry mentioned, called BIPOC Alumni Student Mentoring Program. This is a group that was put together to basically to mentor colored students, and this civil rights group, Equal Protection Project, is calling it racial discrimination because white people aren't allowed in. And I think it's refreshing because we never hear of stories like this. I think it's also a bit absurd because does anyone really think that white students are going to this BIPOC alumni student mentoring program and seeking mentorship? Maybe. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, as the group alleges, UVA is a public university, and the policies in question violate the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. So they may have a case, however insane it is that we're hearing about a case against a black student group not being inclusive of white people.
All right, here's my take on this, very succinctly. This is an organization making a mountain out of a molehill.
Yeah.
An organization making it an absolute mountain out of a molehill.
Mm-hmm.
There's been black fraternity and sororities for decades, generations, centuries. what's happening here is you have an organization that is just trying to add fuel to a fire that is the perfect PR storm for UVA.
Yeah.
This is a nothing burger story. It's easy to jump on the headline. Student group doesn't allow all races into the organization or membership.
Yeah.
The reality is there's groups like this that exist.
Fraternities and sororities don't really count, though,
Why?
because they're not university groups.
How is that possible?
They're not
Didn't Theta Chi just have its fraternal order of agreement stripped from the University of Virginia, despite not being on grounds at the University of Virginia, despite not being in a building owned by the University of Virginia, despite not having administrators in the building ever at all? You're telling me a fraternity is not tied to the University of Virginia, but the University of Virginia can suspend the fraternity to 2028, 2029 at the earliest, and tell members that they can't even convene together in an off-grounds house and have a beer together.
I mean, if you can't tell the difference, I get it, but they're not really the same thing.
Here's what's happening
still.
here. This is what's
I
happening
don't disagree with what you're saying.
This is what's happening. You have a PR storm that's gained more momentum, and that PR storm is tied to the mass murder, it's tied to the protest in May, it's tied to UVA health, it's tied to freedom of speech, it's tied to the suspended tour guides, it's tied to the watering down of the honor code, it's tied to Thomas Jefferson. It's tied to the bloated salaries associated with DEI. And now people are just there goes Creed Eads. People are just piling on and piling on and piling on with nothing burger piles.
Yeah.
You go to a cafeteria, whether it's right or wrong, you go to a school cafeteria, you go to Newcomb Hall, you go to any of the school cafeterias at UVA. And what you're probably going to see is you're going to see students sitting in homogeneous pods. And that's just human nature. This is a headline that is a misfortunate one.
Yeah.
And I say props to the organization that is saying, hey, if you want to join, this is what we're talking about. This is what we want to do. You take a look at Greek life at UVA. Greek life at UVA is about as homogeneous a demographic the university can spit out. And that's one of the problems that administrators and folks of influence have with UVA, with its Greek system. Its Greek system, you know what the problem is? It's a good old boy and a good old gal network. The Greek system, in a lot of ways, we talk about the wealth tied to the university, $85,000 on average for an out-of-stater to attend UVA.
Yeah.
You know what? When you're joining a fraternity and sorority, you're paying dues. You're contributing to the kitchen fund. A lot of these houses have in-house chefs. We did. Her name was Buzz. Buzz had been the cook. She wasn't a chef. She was a cook. She worked a griddle and a stovetop. She prepared breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 65 brothers. 60 years, she sat in a recliner in a kitchen that was 100 degrees in the summer, 50, 60 degrees in the winter. 60 years, Buzz, who is on the composite of the fraternity, would prepare breakfast, lunch, and dinner for brothers that were hammered or rude or coming down in their boxers, not kind, entitled, and that was her job. She was a kind, easygoing African American, and when I was there, she was almost grandma-esque. I spent my 4 years at Phi Kappa Psi getting to know Buzz, sitting in the kitchen on a counter while she was in her recliner watching her stories. Young and the Restless, as the world turns. Eating a grilled cheese or a bacon, egg, and cheese sandwich on white toast. And so many folks had a problem with fraternities and have a problem with fraternities because they come across as old boys networks, old girls networks, sororities. And you talk about wealthy, it costs even more money to join fraternities and sororities than it is to just be a regular student at the University of Virginia. That's the problem people have, and that's why they're on their way out, is because of the socioeconomic status and the demographics of them. I got no problem with this story that we're talking about here. This federal civil complaints levied at this group, I mean, this is a nothing burger story. This group, props to them. You disagree?
Are you talking about the Equal Protection Project group?
No, I'm talking about the group.
The BIPOC group.
The BIPOC group, props to them. Props to them.
I don't know why we're giving them props, but...
How's it any different than a fraternity? Any different than a sorority?
Okay.
A sincere question.
How is it? I mean, it's a completely different group.
Have you seen the composite of a fraternity or a sorority?
If you're just talking about it being single color, okay.
The demographics of fraternity and sorority, it's the same thing.
Okay.
It's easy to pile on, is I guess my point. And in some ways, we fall victim to that here. And we fall victim because we're trying to pass along headlines to you that we're finding in media sources that we trust. Mm-hmm. Cavalier Daily does a good job of it. Was this the Cavalier Daily's reporting? Or did you find it on CBS 19?
This particular one is CBS 19, though I'm sure it's made its way across other news organizations.
Ray Cadell, watching the program on the road again with his band, he said he's listening in the Chesapeake while passing the Chesapeake Bay. Logan Wells Clayo, thank you for watching. I'll close this topic with this. What UVA needs right now is a hard reset. A hard reset. A hard reset with its messaging, maybe with its leadership, with its public relations, a mea culpa. Someone, and maybe this is the BOV, maybe this could be the best advice you give to Jim Ryan. Advice you give to the president. You sit down and your fireside chat like you did when you hosted these during COVID, sleeves rolled up past your elbows, tie at half mast, button down Oxford collar shirt and khakis. And you're perched with your butt against your desk with the camera in front of you, and you say, I am sorry. I have not been the best leader lately. I am sorry. I have reasons to ask for your forgiveness, and these are them. And then you hope for a new direction.
And an end to major headlines.
It's been 18 months of it, right? 24 months of it.
Yeah.
It didn't used to be this way. All right, a couple of tidbits I want to get out of the notebook from Friday's edition of Real Talk with Keith Smith. Viewers and listeners, listen to this. Put the CAAR headline on screen. And I'm going to recap in about 4 minutes for those that did not watch the show. You still have that graph? When I asked for the data, if you could please put that on screen, sir. There's 1,085, according to Keith, who knows this inside and out, CAAR board and MLS members, Charlottesville Area Association of Realtors. 1,085 as of yesterday. Of those 1,085, 41% of them, 41, have done 0 to 1 transactions year to date. That's a whopping percentage. 41% have either done 0 transactions or 1 transaction. 266 have done 0 transactions. 177 have done 1. 99 members, or 9%, have done 2 transactions. 54 members, or 5%, have done 3 transactions. 45 members, or 4%, have done 4 transactions. 26 members, or 2.5%, have done 5. 38 members, 3.5%, have done 6. You're looking at about 11% of CAAR. 11% of 1085 times 0.11 is about 119 agents doing 90% of the business. That is startling. And here's an example of why that is happening. Put the data on screen. This is all vetted by Keith, utilizing CAAR data. The top line is units sold, all home types in the CAAR footprint. From January 1 to October 3rd, 2,254 units sold. That is at an 8-year low. He can go 8 years back because that's when the new data infrastructure started tracking this information. We are in the first 9 months of the year at the lowest amount of units sold since this has been tracked by the new digital infrastructure. Value at the highest, value is the highest it's ever been in CAAR history, right now. So when you have the least amount of units sold, at least since 2016, at the highest price point, and folks not doing a lot of business, you got headwinds of the significant variety. Another interesting wrinkle, the average age of the realtor in CAAR, according to Keith, 57 and a half years old. 57 and a half. So I want you to understand something, viewer and listener, and you, Judah Wickower, if you could bear with me here. 41% of the association has done either 0 transactions or 1 transaction. You then add up the remaining meat and potatoes of what's happening, and you see 119 agents out of 1085 have done 90% of the business. Mm-hmm. You add the 57 and a half average age, and then you add the member dues and the quarterly MLS dues are about $2,700 a year, $2,700 a year. And you ask yourself this: what is the sustainability of this association long term? Especially with what's coming down the pipe. Currently, you're required to be a member of NAR, VAR, and CAAR, National Association of Realtors, Virginia Association of Realtors, Charlottesville Area Association of Realtors. Coming down the pipe, you may not have to be a member of all 3 to have MLS access. That's currently the case. Membership of the 3, MLS access. That is a fair question. I sit across from people all the time, the folks all the time in this business confessional we call an organization here. And they tell us the good, the bad, and ugly of what they are doing business-wise. And the good, the bad, and the ugly of what they're doing business-wise often comes down to this root with the ugly. We are having a difficult time innovating or pivoting or adapting to conditions. That's the root of all the ugly. How do we continue to pivot or innovate with all the changes that are happening in our world? And that is obviously impacting right now what could be the 3rd largest driver of the economy in Central Virginia. We know one driver, monetary-wise, of the economy in Central Virginia is what? Spies, the government sector, government contracting.
Yeah.
There was a white paper authored by Albemarle County, Charlottesville City, and the Chamber of Commerce. What did it peg the economic impact of the defense sector? I think it was like $1.3 billion per year. Economic impact, defense sector, Charlottesville. Chamber of Commerce. I'm Googling. I think it's 1.2 or 1.3 billion a year. Okay, I was right. 1.2 billion. I've had conversations with people that I trust. One of them is Neale Williamson, who's watching right now. He indicated to me, and I am in complete agreement with him, that tourism and hospitality surpass this 1.2 annual impact of the defense sector on the local economy. Number one, let's cut to the chase, is the University of Virginia.
Yeah.
Let's put number one, the University of Virginia, the most significant driver of the local economy. Do we have an actual number for University of Virginia? If I was the University of Virginia, I would have that number and I would be branding and marketing that everywhere around town. This is the economic impact the University of Virginia has on the Central Virginia economy. Because every time Michael Payne says there needs to be a payment in lieu of taxes program because UVA is eating up real estate and not paying taxes on it, UVA should say, this is the economic impact we are having on Charlottesville, Albemarle, and Central Virginia. Number one, it's UVA. I do not think number two is the defense sector and their annual impact of $1.2 billion. I think tourism and hospitality are in the two slot. I believe Neale thinks that's the case as well. In fact, I'm very confident Neale thinks that's the case. Let's say the defense sector is three, at $1.2 billion. Number four, find me a driver of the economy in Central Virginia that has more of an impact of what I predict is the fourth slotted real estate sector. Anyone have one that is more of a driver of the local economy than the fourth slotted defense sector? Anyone? I say it goes 1 UVA, 2 tourism and hospitality, 3 defense sector, 4 real estate. And here with the data he's showing us, 11% of the agents are doing 90% of the business, and 41% of the agents are doing 0 to 1 transactions and are basically losing money every year when you factor dues, MLS access, taxes, gas, phone, and other expenses. You find me a category of work, Judah, I'm serious here. You're not going to find the economic impact at UVA. I know that's what you're looking for.
I've got it for the state, but not for our locality.
You have the UVA's economic impact in the Commonwealth of Virginia? What is it?
$5.9 billion.
Okay, $5.9 billion in the Commonwealth. I have a sincere question for you. A sincere question for you. You let me know an industry where 41% of the workforce is losing money being a part of the workforce. And this is not even 41%. If you're part of the category that's 2 transactions, 99 of the members, or 9%, 3 transactions, 54 of the members, 5%, 4 transactions, 45 of the members, 4%. I would say any of the folks that are doing 3 transactions and under, after paying your taxes, everything else, I would put that number at 8 transactions a year. If you're doing less than 8 a year, you're doing less than 8 a year, you may be, depending on the size of the transactions you're doing, maybe at 30, 40% AMI.
Okay.
Give me another industry where that's the case.
No idea.
Well, the answer you should have said is probably tourism, hospitality, and food and beverage.
You think?
I know. The argument we've had on previous shows The Charlottesville Albemarle Convention and Visitors Bureau brags about the impact of tourism and hospitality on the local economy. We think it's the second largest driver of the economy. And then we said, if this is the second largest driver of the economy, tourism, hospitality, and they're hiring folks in the $15 to $20 an hour range, $15 an hour is $30,000 a year salary. A $15 an hour, $30,000 a year salary is not just, is the AMI household income is 124.2. My point is this. You have white-collar professionals that are struggling at the same clip or greater as service industry frontline workers and blue-collar professionals. But we don't tell the story of the white-collar professional struggle. My point is also this. The extremely rapid nature of innovation and technology shifting industries is crushing so many spaces of work.
No doubt.
We talk food and beverage and kiosks and online ordering and third-party delivering. We talk the fractional or minuscule margins of grocery and how technology is eviscerating selling goods on a shelf. We talk retail. You got to throw the real estate piece in there. The days of spending $3,000 or $4,000 a year on Zillow leads, hoping you get some strangers to pick up the phone and call you so you can sell them some real estate, are long gone.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you want to add to this?
No.
You find that fascinating at all?
Yeah, I mean, I'm less keyed into that industry than you and Keith, certainly. It means far less to me, and the numbers are, just don't...
But this should mean something to you because this is the community you live in.
Yeah, but
And this impacts everything you're a part of.
Right.
Impacts the value of the home you own.
Okay.
You get that, right?
You've gone on a bit of a ramble, and you've kind of lost me in terms of how this fits together.
Okay.
Sorry,
I'm no problem. Not your cup of tea. I understand. Something for you guys to think about. What's the next headline?
Local restaurateurs.
This is a good headline.
Yeah, this is a good headline. There are a lot of people in Charlottesville and Albemarle County who are helping with the Helene recovery. People filling up trucks to take down to locations down south, and I applaud them all. This particular article points out that two restaurateurs who we know, the ladies from Moose's,
Amy Benson, friend of the program.
Yeah, they are helping to send supplies down. In this case, to let's see, I think it's North Carolina. Melinda Stargell and Amy Benson.
Melinda's Moose.
Moose's by the Creek.
Fantastic softball player.
Partnered up with Tom Powell to collect and distribute donations. And they say, Stargell says, when we bought the restaurant, it was our mission to use as a platform to give back. And they're certainly doing that. And I just want to give a shout out to them and everyone else who is doing what seems like more than our own government to help the beleaguered people who were hit very hard by this storm.
My parents live in Flat Rock, North Carolina. 40 minutes from Asheville. Right next to Hendersonville. They said the area looks like a third world country.
Yeah.
They just got electricity on yesterday.
Yeah. A lot of people.
Most of the community does not have electricity.
Right.
Most of the community is going to the river, getting water, and boiling it.
Wow. That's one of the things that this article points out is that people can live a lot longer without food than water. So one of the most important things, if you can help to send down, is water.
The next story to follow is the lack of catastrophic coverage these homeowners have.
Not to mention the lack of help from FEMA saying that they don't have the money to help.
The next story to follow is the insurance agencies saying, we're not going to give you the coverage you thought you had because the flood insurance you have was not to this extreme. Because who would have expected floods in the mountains?
Oh, I doubt anybody in the mountains even has flood coverage.
The next story to follow is, how does this impact the presidential election? The next story to follow is, how does the federal government offer resources to Florida, North Carolina, Tennessee? And how does it offer resources outside the country? Because if there's a prioritization of outside the country over inside the United States, that's wrong. The next story to follow is the devastation of communities who cannot recover from this. Many of these communities were seeing a population loss already. The next story to follow is, how does this impact the home values in these localities? My dad was telling me about his barbershop in downtown Hendersonville. My mom and dad, God-fearing people, some of the nicest people you met. They're like, we're going to help these businesses recover. One of the first places they wanted to go was to the barber my dad loves. It's going to bring him $500. Goes to the barbershop, gets to the window. Water had gone to the ceiling of the barbershop. Oof. There was no barbershop left.
Yeah.
No barbershop. There was no remnants of a barbershop in the barbershop. There was no clippers, there was no mirrors, there was no dryers, there was no scissors, there was no chairs, there was no waiting room, there was no pictures on the frame, there was no barbershop.
Yeah.
There was no barbershop. Then they went to a hot dog place that they loved. They get to the hot dog place. The owner is outside. Said, I appreciate your donation. I'm not going to accept it. I don't even think I'm going to open this business again.
Yeah. There are people in Maui who are still trying to rebuild, and that's I can't imagine the swaths of land that are just devastated right now. It is going to take a long time to rebuild.
This from Direct Message. Facebook DM. UVA is like a big box anchor tenant or grocery store and shopping center when looking at negotiations with the landlord or UVA to the other governing bodies. They have the power, and possibly rightfully so. To the economic driver beyond UVA, real estate is so unique because it is a party to basically every industry just itself. Many businesses are funded by the profit from real estate, and real estate is the benefactor of leases and sales within itself. Further, you have the municipalities taxing real estate at the highest and best use that funds almost our entire tax coffers, and that then pays for schools and not-for-profits. So this particular viewer and listener is saying that real estate may be ranked even higher than the 4 slot. Makes a very good argument there. This comes from Twitter DM and Deep Throat. There's 61,000 owner-occupied units in our Charlottesville MSA, 61,000. How do you have 1,100 agents when there are only 61,000 units? What would you expect the turnover to be? 50 some odd houses per realtor. Really? He asked the question. 50 houses per realtor. I've said on this program the category that is the most saturated of any in Charlottesville metropolitan area. It's restaurants, then realtors. Mm-hmm. Two most saturated categories. I had an interesting conversation earlier this week with a second-generation business owner. I will not name the business nor the business owner, and he made this argument. Since Leonard Sandridge left the University of Virginia, UVA is now so focused on its bottom line, it's no longer the top client of many locally owned businesses in the area. At one time, UVA was the top client of locally owned businesses in the area. Yeah. Now UVA is trying to squeeze every penny possible from locally owned businesses, so much so that the locally owned business has to ask the question, do I do business with the devil? We had the conversation yesterday on the show about servicing a client. Not every dollar is equal.
Yeah.
Some work requires headaches that others do not.
No doubt.
This did not get the attention it deserves. If you could get the Afton Scientific up. This broke on our talk show 2 days ago at the end of the Wednesday show. $200 million invested by Afton Scientific, a biotech firm in Albemarle County down Avon Extended, right over the city-county line.
Yeah.
200 new jobs created, six-figure jobs. Mm-hmm. There goes Nicole Scrow right there, developer and attorney. Where are 200 six-figure employees going to live?
Wherever they want.
The inventory levels, sold units through the first 9 months of the year, according to the graph, are at an 8-year low. No one is talking about the impact of the 8,000 to 10,000 jobs that are coming to this area at the same time that inventory levels are at generational low, at the same time home values are at an all-time high. Mm-hmm. No one is talking about that but this talk show. 8,000 to 10,000 new jobs, inventory levels at generation low, values at all-time high. No one is talking about that. Mm-hmm. And did you read Sean Tubbs and his Charlottesville Community Substack last week? There was a quote from Rory Stolzenberg in his Substack. Did you guys read this?
Possibly.
The Planning Commissioner, Rory Stolzenberg, talking about the new zoning ordinance. He said, I am not at a freak-out mode right now with the NZO and the lack of activity. He goes, I'm not at freak-out panic mode yet, but I'm getting close. And that coincided within a 48-hour window of the developer that developed the apartment tower where Blue Moon Diner is, Heirloom Development.
Yeah.
The guy that owned the building where the Artful Lodger was. Mm-hmm. He sold his position where the Artful Lodger and the livery stable are located. He recently sold his position in September. Mm-hmm. And he sold his position in September for $5,750,000. The Artful Lodger, livery stable, that shopping center. This guy bought it for $4 million in June of 2020 during the depths of COVID. During the depths of COVID, he bought 218 West Market Street for $4 million. He sold it this past September for $5,750,000. Jeffrey Levin. He sold it to a Glen Allen firm that's going to build a hotel there. He said in that media coverage, the developer, I could not make the economics work for residential under the new zoning ordinance.
Yeah.
You got the planning commissioner that drove the NZO to reality, the number one proponent of the NZO, saying in a planning commission meeting, I'm not at the point of freaking out here, but I'm close. within 48 hours of a developer saying that I could not make the economics work of the NZO when it came to residential. We said this all along. On this talk show, we said this all along. We said this all along, Gina. All right, I'll close with this. You want to do the Uber story? You can do the Uber story. You said that was important to you.
I don't know if it's important to me, but I think we're
That was your idea.
more and more of this type of thing. Basically, a pair of a couple who were taking an Uber ride had they were in an accident, or rather, well, the driver was in an accident. They both were injured. They have, incurred medical bill debt and have trouble, working, whatnot. The problem is when they tried to sue Uber, they were denied. They couldn't even sue Uber. And when you hear the reason, I hope your jaw drops, because the reason they can't sue Uber is because apparently they had signed, or they had checkmarked a box on an Uber Eats delivery that apparently meant they couldn't make a claim against Uber. And something similar happened at Disney, where somebody was injured or made sick by something they ate there and were not allowed to sue Disney because apparently
on the back of the ticket.
They had signed the TOS on Disney Plus that said that
That's hilarious.
If there were any if they had to settle anything out of court with Disney, so they couldn't bring them to court.
Deep Throat says the Disney one was overruled.
The point is, we're seeing more and more of this, where companies are have interests.
Every hedge possible?
They have interests in multiple areas, and you may have to be careful signing something for one area of that business and down the line affecting another part of that business.
Didn't you say in a previous show that no one reads contracts?
Exactly. It's crazy.
Survival of the fittest.
Yeah. Imagine having your Uber driver crash and you get injured and you can't sue because you ordered from Uber Eats once.
Bananas.
Insanity.
Absolutely bananas.
Yeah.
Last topic of the show, 12 o'clock tomorrow, Scott Stadium. UVA is a 2.5-point favorite. Boston College, 4-1, 1-0. UVA, 3-1, 1-0. The Wahoos fresh off the bye. This is a big game. This is a big game, ladies and gentlemen. Boston College was picked in the preseason to be at the bottom of the ACC. UVA was picked in the preseason to be second to last in the ACC. In fact, Las Vegas had the over-under at 3.5 games, total wins for UVA in the preseason. UVA is already at 3. Tomorrow's outcome is who's the pretender. You got 2 surprise teams. One of them will stay atop the ACC standings. The other one will fall to 500 in conference play. This is a big game, especially as Virginia enters the meat and potatoes of its schedule, with Louisville still on the docket, 22 in the country, Clemson and Death Valley, 15 in the country, close at Virginia Tech, trip to Notre Dame, South Bend, Pittsburgh, UNC, SMU. Boston College's quarterback, Tommy Castellanos, is back. After taking a break, the Eagles started a backup quarterback against Western Kentucky and snuck a victory out by the skin of their teeth. 12 o'clock tomorrow, Scott Stadium. Over under at 40,000 people. We don't have to put a bet on this. Do you think over 40,000 in attendance tomorrow or less than 40,000? Don't have to put a bet on it.
I have no idea. I'm going to say under.
I'll take the over for the sake of conversation.
All right.
Over 40,000. No, nothing on the line for that one. We're out of the studio next week. I Love CVille Network, off air next week. We return to our regularly scheduled programming a week from Monday, ladies and gentlemen. That is what, Judah? That is the 14th. Judah's going to work on his suntan in the Outer Banks with his family. Do you tan?
Sometimes.
What's the beach like in October in the Outer Banks?
It's usually pretty nice.
Okay.
I mean, it's not sweltering. It's not so hot that you spend an hour on the beach and you're like, oh, I got to get out of here. It's also the off season, so there's usually less people.
Very nice. Enjoy your time.
Thank you.
I hope you tip a few back and have some good food and enjoy the family. We will see you guys on the 14th of October. So long, everybody.